Topic of this video is assessment frameworks and resilience metrics. The contents of the training are urban resilience and significance. What are the assessment frameworks? Key elements of urban resilience framework: stakeholder involvement, adaptability, scalability, types of resilience metrics, infrastructure functionality, types of resilience metrics, social indicators, types of resilience metrics, ecosystem and climate service performance, types of resilience metrics, composite indexes, global tools, and indices under disaster resilience scorecard for cities. Rockefeller 100, RC City Resilience Framework, ISO 37123, Indicators for Resilient Cities, Application in Urban Planning, Summary and Reflections. The learning objectives of the training are: understand frameworks for evaluating urban resilience, identify quantitative and qualitative resilience metrics, explore global tools and indexes used in planning and policy. Urban resilience is fundamentally defined as the ability of a city or urban system to prepare for, resist, absorb, accommodate, adapt to, transform, and recover from the effects of acute shocks, such as floods, earthquakes, or power outages, and chronic stresses, like environmental degradation, chronic poverty, or unemployment, in a timely and efficient manner. This concept requires an urban system to preserve or rapidly return to its designed functions following a disturbance, ensuring the preservation and restoration of its essential basic structures and services through risk management. The significance of urban resilience is tied to its role as a general approach to reduce long-term urban vulnerability and as an essential enabler of sustainable development. Efficient preparation for imminent threats preserves social and economic stability, allowing growth even in a changing environment. Ultimately, disaster resilience aims to minimize immediate and longer-term loss of life and damage to livelihoods, property, infrastructure, economic activity, and the environment, focusing on ensuring the continuity or rapid restoration of critical city services, as electricity, water, and telecommunications. Resilience assessment frameworks serve the purpose of providing a structured lens to evaluate the complexity of cities, allowing them to understand the extent of their resilience, identify critical areas of weakness, and determine actions and programs for improvement. The structure of these frameworks relies on defining resilience across multiple dimensions, such as health and well-being, economy and society, infrastructure and environment, and leadership and strategy in the City Resilience Framework, CRF, and encompassing core qualities like reflectiveness, robustness, and integration. For cities, these frameworks matter profoundly because they convert the abstract concept of resilience into an operational tool that enables them to proactively plan for the long term. The key elements of urban resilience frameworks related to stakeholder involvement, adaptability, and scalability are multifaceted, integrating governmental, technical, and social capacities across various spatial and temporal scales. Effective stakeholder involvement is a foundational element that focuses on governance and collective action to build city resilience. Frameworks emphasize inclusiveness, requiring broad consultation, and ensuring many seats at the table to establish a sense of shared ownership or a joint vision for the resilient city. This collaborative approach ensures that actions address the needs of all populations, particularly the most vulnerable. Core processes demand the engagement and building of alliances with all relevant groups, including government at all levels, civil society organizations, the private sector, NGOs, local businesses, community organizations or grassroots organizations, and academic institutions. Adaptability ensures that a system can adjust within itself to reduce its vulnerability. This involves preparing both the physical environment, for example, retrofitting prevention measures, flood-proofing buildings, elevating housing structures, and the social sphere, for example, citizens knowing what procedures to follow to save lives and belongings. Adaptability, along with robustness and transformability, is recognized as a necessary attribute for a resilient system. Adaptable systems are defined by their flexibility, which is the ability and willingness to adopt alternative strategies in response to sudden crises or changing circumstances, sometimes by introducing new technologies or traditional practices. Resilience frameworks emphasize the need for reflectiveness, where individuals and institutions leverage past experiences, analyze previous events, and modify behaviors and standards accordingly to respond to changing conditions, such as climate change. Scalability in resilience frameworks refers to the ability to apply assessment and strategy development across different spatial levels, from neighborhood vulnerability up to complex regional systems. As multi-scalar application, frameworks are broadly applicable across different geographic units, covering large-scale urban systems, cities, and local communities. The criteria used to assess resilience must be adjusted depending on the scale of the target system, differentiating between individual structures, infrastructure networks, and urban communities. While intra-city assessment, methods like the Community Disaster Resilience Clustering (CDRC) method explicitly address the need for analysis at the city level by grouping sub-communities based on characteristics such as physical vulnerability and socioeconomic recoverability. This approach helps identify localized groups that may require targeted resilience planning and interventions. Also, intercity and transboundary coordination need resilience planning, which often requires extending beyond a city's boundaries. The UNDRA scorecard encourages cities to learn from one another and share best practices. Flexibility in depth can be considered as another level. The structure of assessment tools is often scalable in terms of detail required. For example, the UNDRA scorecard provides a streamlined, preliminary assessment, Level 1, with 47 indicators for quick evaluation, and a much deeper, more resource-intensive detailed assessment, Level 2, with 117 criteria for comprehensive resilience action planning. The types of resilience metrics used in urban contexts fall primarily into quantitative indicators, focused on physical performance, qualitative measures of societal function, and integrated composite models. We will go deep into these metrics. Infrastructure resilience metrics often rely on quantifiable loss factors and continuity assurance measures derived from critical asset assessments, especially within the utility and transportation sectors. For water and sanitation systems, the loss factor measures the estimated number of days required to restore regular service area, wide multiplied by the percentage of user accounts affected. A similar critical asset loss factor, for example, water/sanitation critical asset, WCA, loss factor, or electricity critical asset, ECA, loss factor, is calculated to measure disruption to essential facilities like hospitals, based on service days, loss multiplied by the percentage of critical assets affected. Electrical energy resilience is measured by the estimated percentage of annual billed revenue loss due to service disruption and restoration costs. In transportation, metrics assess both general system operability via the road loss factor, miles of major road network impassable multiplied by days closed relative to total major roads, and the survival of critical access and evacuation routes by calculating loss factors based on carrying capacity, vehicles or tons per hour/day. Beyond physical damage, metrics track the assurance of continuity for critical administration and infrastructure computer systems, measured by the percentage of critical applications and data backed up and accessible from a remote site within specific rapid recovery times, for example, 1 hour or 15 minutes. Additionally, healthcare resilience uses the metric bed days lost, which estimates the number of beds at risk multiplied by the number of days of loss under anticipated scenarios. Social indicators quantify a community's capacity to absorb shocks and recover efficiently, often forming a component of a broader socioeconomic recoverability measure. Metrics focus on two aspects: quantifying vulnerability and assessing recovery potential. Vulnerability is measured by identifying the vulnerable population as a percentage of the city population, or assessing statistics on disadvantaged groups, such as those in high poverty, transient communities, the elderly, physically or mentally sick, or non-native language speakers. Recoverability is assessed using factors aggregated into social, economic, and community capital indices. Social indices often incorporate parameters such as the percentage of the population aged 16 to 65 years. Economic factors include the percentage of homeownership, female labor participation, and the employment rate, which reflect financial capacity and equitable resource distribution for restoration. These social capacities are also proxied by metrics tracking the presence and engagement of grassroots or community organizations in neighborhoods, and the proportion of businesses that possess a documented business continuity plan, reviewed regularly. Metrics related to ecosystem performance evaluate the natural environment's health and its protective buffering capacity, especially against climate-induced hazards like floods or heat waves. The cornerstone is the identification and monitoring of critical ecosystem services, for example, sand dunes, coastal wetlands, forests, urban greenery, as critical assets. Performance is assessed based on the change in health, extent or benefit of each ecosystem service over a defined period, for example, the last 5 years, gauged by key health and performance indicators derived by technical experts. Measures track the promotion of green and blue infrastructure, such as permeable surfaces, green roofs, and restoring river corridors, on major urban development and infrastructure projects via policy and guidance material. Additionally, spatial accountability is measured through transboundary assessments, determining the number of critical ecosystem assets identified outside the city boundaries that enhance city resilience and tracking whether regular agreements exist with bordering neighbors to manage these assets. Composite indexes aggregate diverse metrics across multiple dimensions into a single quantitative score, or index, to simplify the comparison of overall resilience. The tools like NDGAIN provide detailed information on highly structured, multi-dimensional models that serve the same function. Examples include the Baseline Resilience Indicators for the Community (BRIC) model, which quantifies community resilience using numerous parameters categorized across 6 dimensions: social, economic, community capital, institutional, infrastructure, and environmental. The Community Disaster Resilience Index, CDRI, is another index-based model designed for measuring community resilience. Similarly, the People's Framework assesses functionality through 7 dimensions: population and demographic, environmental and ecosystem, organized governmental services, physical infrastructure, lifestyle and community competence, economic development, and social cultural capital. These composite approaches integrate both physical vulnerability, often calculated through structural damage analysis for a specific hazard scenario, and socioeconomic recoverability, derived from census data parameters, to identify resilience clusters within a community, providing a broad overview of the potential recoverability. The effectiveness of the assessment is contingent on the ability to quantify these components, which results in a scalar measure suitable for benchmarking. Global resilience assessment tools and indices provide standardized methods for cities to evaluate their vulnerabilities and capacities against various shocks and stresses, promoting strategic planning and continuous improvement. We will focus on 3 of them, which are, under Disaster Resilience Scorecard for Cities, Rockefeller 100 RC City Resilience Framework, ISO 37123, Indicators for Resilient Cities. The Disaster Resilience Scorecard for Cities was developed by the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, UNDRIR, with support from organizations including the European Commission, IBM, and ACOM. Its primary purpose is to assist local governments in monitoring and reviewing progress toward the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, 2015 to 2030, and enables the development of local resilience action plans. The scorecard scope covers the city's ability to withstand and bounce back from both acute shocks, for example, floods, earthquakes, chemical spills, and chronic stresses, for example, environmental degradation, homelessness, and unemployment. The assessment is structured around the 10 essentials for making cities resilient. Essentials 1 to 3 cover governance and financial capacity, For example, organizing for resilience, identifying risks, strengthening financial capacity. Essentials 4 to 8 cover planning and disaster preparation, for example, resilient urban development, safeguarding natural buffers, strengthening institutional and societal capacity, and increasing infrastructure resilience. Essentials 9 to 10 cover disaster response and post-event recovery, for example, ensuring effective response and expediting recovery/building back better. The scorecard offers 2 scoring levels. Level 1 is preliminary assessment, which is a high-level survey suggested for a 1 to 2 day multi-stakeholder workshop, consisting of 47 questions/indicators, each scored from 0 to 3. Level 2 is a detailed assessment, which is a comprehensive multi-stakeholder exercise, typically taking 1 to 4 months, which serves as a basis for a detailed city resilience action plan, comprising 117 indicator criteria scored from 0 to 5. This tool requires a multi-stakeholder dialogue and is intended to guide cities toward improved disaster risk reduction and knowledge sharing rather than providing normative scores comparable across different cities. The City Resilience Framework, CRF, was pioneered by the Rockefeller Foundation and developed by Arup. It provides a lens to understand the complexity of cities and the underlying drivers that contribute to their resilience. The CRF structures resilience around 4 dimensions and is based on 7 qualities. The 4 dimensions organize the drivers of resilience based on functional areas of the city. Health and well-being focuses on the health and welfare of everyone living and working in the city. Economy and society addresses the social and financial systems that enable urban populations to act collectively and live peacefully. Infrastructure and environment concerns how natural and man-made infrastructure provide critical services and protect citizens. Leadership and strategy covers integrated planning, effective management, and the empowerment of stakeholders. The 7 qualities of resilient systems describe the necessary characteristics of a resilient city that help systems withstand, respond to, and adapt more readily to shocks and stresses. These qualities are reflectiveness, resourcefulness, robustness, redundancy, flexibility, inclusiveness, and integration. ISO 37123-2019 is an international standard that defines and establishes the definitions and methodologies for a set of indicators on resilience in cities. It is part of a series of international standards developed to provide a uniform, standardized, and comparable approach to measurement. The standard focuses on assessing a city's ability to prepare for, recover from, and adapt to shocks and stresses. It is specifically intended to be used in conjunction with ISO 37120 indicators for city services and quality of life, and follows the principles of ISO 37101 Management System for Sustainable Development in Communities. ISO 37123 indicators are structured around various themes corresponding to different city sectors and services. The standard explicitly acknowledges the relationship between resilient development and sustainable development. For utility, the indicators can be organized conceptually to align with the risk management process, the disaster management process, the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, and the UN Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. The application of such tools and indexes can need some testing, investments, and interventions. The foundation of resilience assessment is establishing a baseline measurement of a city's current status and understanding the full scope of potential threats. Frameworks, such as the Community Disaster Resilience Clustering (CDRC) method, begin by requiring documentation of the methodology and findings from surveys to inform this baseline. A central objective is to help cities identify and understand current and future risk scenarios to inform subsequent decision-making. This process involves a comprehensive evaluation of hazards, exposures, and vulnerabilities. Once risks and vulnerabilities are assessed, urban planning frameworks pivot to identifying critical areas of weakness and determining actions and programs to improve the city's resilience. This enables a discussion of priorities for investment and action based on a shared understanding of the city's current situation. Prioritization requires that investment decisions are coherently argued and assembled into a set of 5-year financial plans. Planning instruments contribute by incorporating natural risks as a conditioning criterion from the initial stages of spatial planning. Effective assessment frameworks treat resilience as an iterative procedure that demands continuous evaluation and learning. Tools like the UNDRA scorecard are explicitly designed to help monitor and review progress and challenges in implementing resilience strategies. This continuous process includes establishing performance indicators, reporting systems, and regularly reviewing strategic plans to incorporate lessons learned and adapt standards and behaviors. As another example, the ISO 37123 standard formalizes many of these metrics by establishing definitions and methodologies for a set of indicators on resilience performance in cities. Resilience assessment metrics, anchored within formal planning frameworks like the City Resilience Framework, CRF, and the UNDRA Disaster Resilience Scorecard for cities, function to structure resilience planning and decision-making by organizing complex urban characteristics into measurable dimensions, goals, and inherent qualities, such as robustness, adaptability, and transformability. Frameworks convert resilience into an operational tool that enables cities to assess their preparedness against shocks and stresses, set priorities for investment and action, for example, in infrastructure or capacity building, and incorporate future scenarios and risk considerations into strategic documents like spatial plans. These metrics allow comparison, learning, and accountability by providing quantifiable results, whether through composite indices like the Baseline Resilience Indicators for the Community, BRIC, or through scoring systems, like the UNDRA scorecard. However, the effective use depends heavily on context, data, and transparency. Effective assessment requires reliable, up-to-date data on hazards, vulnerabilities, and exposures, especially for local contexts, and must be balanced with acknowledging that the resulting scores may be subjective and are not normative or automatically comparable across cities due to contextual differences. Transparency is addressed by requiring policies to gather and manage data for sharing among practitioners and citizens, aiming for a single integrated set of resilience data, or a single version of the truth to inform both experts and the public. Urban resilience frameworks are vital tools for translating abstract goals into actionable planning. By establishing disaster resilience baselines, they help cities pinpoint vulnerabilities and organize complex concepts into measurable dimensions. A significant strength lies in their ability to foster stakeholder consensus, breaking down professional silos to align diverse interests. Furthermore, they highlight outbound dividends co-benefits where resilience infrastructure, such as flood mitigating parks, provides daily social and environmental value beyond risk reduction. However, implementation is frequently stifled by institutional and political hurdles. Fragmentation remains a primary barrier, as scattered departmental responsibilities dilute political priority and prevent a holistic approach. This is compounded by an entrapment effect, where bureaucracy favors traditional methods over innovative strategies due to rigid legal frameworks. Additionally, complex concepts like nature-based solutions often trigger conflicting priorities among stakeholders. These challenges are exacerbated by a lack of comprehensive economic data on disaster costs, making scenario planning difficult. Finally, physical constraints regarding land ownership and availability often stall the deployment of green infrastructure. Ultimately, while frameworks provide the necessary roadmap, overcoming ingrained governance inertia and resource gaps remains the critical challenge for urban transformation.